Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. At the outset, I feel it is only right that I outline the motivation behind my request for this debate. I want this evening to take you to the townland of Leganani, 5 miles outside Castlewellan in the parliamentary constituency of South Down in Northern Ireland, to a quiet rural location where both traditions lived together in relative harmony throughout much of the time now described to many as the Troubles. On the 3rd of May 1985, William Heenan, a 52-year-old widower, went outside one morning to feed some livestock in the yard. This was his home, along with his 12-year-old son, Sammy. Sadly, William's wife had passed away 2 years previous. It was the last morning that William would ever feed his animals. Madam Deputy Speaker, Sammy Heenan, William's son, is now a grown man with his own family, and I've known him for some time. He is a man of great character, great resolve, and of very strong faith. He is someone who, if his late father had grown old to see his son grow up, would have made him very, very proud. As a 12-year-old, Sammy's life changed forever. This is his account of that morning in 1985. When I was a 12-year-old child, I lived 5 miles north of rural Castlewellan. On that fateful morning, on the 3rd of May 1985 at 7 a.m, I went out to find my father brutally murdered after I heard his final haunting and dying screams. He had been forced to his knees and shot twice in the top of the head at point-blank range by South Down Provisional IRA gunmen. The image of his face, bloodied and unrecognisable as he lay on the ground that morning, will be etched on my mind forever. After which I had to run to the neighbour's house half a mile away to raise the alarm, sobbing and in a state of utter despair. Sammy Heenan's life story is one that is replicated by many across Northern Ireland. Mothers and fathers, brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, grandparents, friends, murdered by terrorists. The broken-hearted remain to live with a life of psychological and physical scars that will never ever heal. And it is those victims for whom I asked for this debate today, because despite the scars, despite the lifetime of grief and of anguish, despite the trauma inflicted on them that no one should face, we have those within our society who glorify that terror that caused this pain, who revel in the actions of those who planted bombs or shot people in the head. And sadly, Madam Deputy Speaker, some of them are members of this House. A little over 5 miles from the very spot that the IRA murdered William Heenan in the town of Castlewellan sits the McNulty Magorian Advice Centre. It operates as a constituency office of the member of this House for South Down. For your information, Madam Deputy Speaker, McNulty was killed in a premature bomb explosion during an IRA attack on Castlewellan RUC station in January 1972. Magorian died after being shot by the army in August 1974. Both were provisional IRA terrorists. In the act of naming an office after 2 terrorists and operating as a member of this House from that office, one would think that this Parliament, the bastion of democratic principles, the very place where parliamentary democracy was founded, would stop such an affront to democracy. This House, Mr. Speaker, knows only too well the barbaric actions of terrorists. Ari Neve, Ian Gow, the Reverend Robert Bradford were serving members of this House, murdered by members of the same terrorist organisation who we have a parliamentary constituency office named after in South Down. Yet this is not the case, Madam Deputy Speaker, for I have raised this with the Parliamentary Standards Commissioner, who has responded saying she has no grounds to investigate. Likewise, IPSA say it's not for them. And by doing nothing, we facilitate, indeed financially support, an MP who day and daily glorifies terrorists. I urge the Minister this evening to undertake to address this issue at the earliest possible opportunity. Madam Deputy Speaker, in this instance, it is a case of doing what is right, of recognising the hurt and pain this causes innocent victims and saying this House will not facilitate or allow this to happen any longer.
We've already give way.
I will give way.
Can I congratulate and thank my honourable friend and colleague for Upper Bann for bringing this forward. I know Sammy Heenan as well, and I understand that. Does anybody share the concerns that many others have outside of that family circle? And I know that the Minister in particular understands this issue, that the local councils, for instance, in Newry, Mourne and Down have named a play park after Raymond McCreesh, who was one of the hunger strikers who gave his life or committed suicide, whatever you want to put it, at the Cache. But he was a convicted terrorist. And is there something wrong, and does she share my concern, that while Newry, Mourne and Down can call a play park after a convicted terrorist, then very much this House should take action against the Member of Parliament for South Down?
I thank the Honourable Member for giving way, and whilst my remarks are at large around the Heenan family and the hurt that it causes to them, you are right, the glorification of terrorism anywhere is wrong and has repercussions for innocent victims. Madam Deputy Speaker, when I told Sammy Heenan that I had secured this debate today, he asked me to make this plea to you on behalf of him and the many victims of terrorism in South Downs. And these are his words. How can we as a progressive society in 2020 continue to countenance the repugnant naming of an MP's constituency office in the United Kingdom after 2 dead IRA terrorists? The symbolism attached to this office naming is massive and morally obscene, thus inadvertently legitimising every terrorist act perpetrated against UK citizens. I implore this Parliament to exhaust every avenue in righting this grievous wrong which continues to cause affliction to the innocent of our country. As a Parliament, please be cognisant of the traumatism and use whatever means necessary to ensure terrorist revisionism such as this ceases to be funded and tolerated. I cannot add any more to this, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is important that, as we in Northern Ireland look to the future, that those who want to revel in the evil deeds of the past, to seek to rewrite that past and make it acceptable that the murder and mayhem terrorists imposed on our country are not aided and abetted by our accommodation of such perversion and of what actually happened. To enable this in any way will only serve to bring about a generation who believes such heinous crimes to have been justified, acceptable and worthy of celebration. Only this week, members of the County Armagh Ladies Camogie team, a Gaelic game for those unfamiliar with the term, were videoed celebrating a success on the pitch with repeated chants of "Ooh ah up the Ra," a clear reference to the IRA, a prescribed terrorist organisation responsible for the killing of some 1,700 people. How utterly depressing. None of these girls were alive during the worst years of IRA terrorism, yet this chanting was part and parcel of their celebrations. Closer to this place, earlier this year, London, Young Labour tweeted a picture of the Falls Road mural dedicated to the IRA man Bobby Sands. They wrote, "On this day in 1981, Socialist and Republican Bobby Sands died as a prisoner of war following a hunger strike during which he became an elected MP. We remember him and continue to fight for an end to imperialism and for a free and united Ireland." Madam Deputy Speaker, Bobby Sands was a bomber. Bobby Sands was not a prisoner of war. He was a terrorist, a man so consumed with hatred that he actually killed himself. Yet here we have a youth wing of the official opposition in this place lauding this man. What does this say to victims? There are many, many other examples of how this encouragement, this glorification of terrorism happens in our society. The policing board member who describes the shooting of a prison officer in the head as one of the best ops, the Gaelic football grounds and competitions named after IRA men, the Northern Ireland executive ministers who attend glorification events. Madam Deputy Speaker, if any other party in this House were to do this for any terrorist event or organisation, it would not be accepted. I have a young son, Charlie, and I want him to grow up in a society that has values, that has respect for the rule of law, that is at peace with one another. Yet I look at a society today where the very encouragement and glorification of terrorism goes largely unchallenged. In such a society, real reconciliation cannot happen. For in such a society, those who suffer most, our victims, are not respected. They are insulted. Until this stops, until those who engage in this behaviour cease and recognise the hurt and wrongs they do and have done, we will never have that real peace that we crave. Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Well said.